Hi, today we're going to take a look at some photo editing using Adobe Camera Raw and Photoshop. So I'm going to open up a raw image. When you drag and drop that image onto the Photoshop app, it will open up this image in Camera Raw. Now, Camera Raw gives you the ability to process your image based on the raw data that is available in that image. The first thing you do when you open up an image in Camera Raw is to make sure you have taken care of the distortions that are caused by the camera and the lens that has been used for this image. So to do that, you go to the optics section under the edit panel, and there you tick mark these two options here: remove chromatic aberrations and use profile corrections. If this arrow is pointing left, click on it so that it opens up the options for you. And here, as you notice, it gives you the lens you've used, etc., and it enables you to do profile corrections. And if you further want to make any changes, you could move these sliders to adjust any of these vignetting or distortion or elements of distortion that may or may not be there in the image. Okay, so this is very important because as you may notice on the edge here, because chromatic aberrations is on, you cannot see those aberrations at the edge here. But if I put that off, you now see this green purplish line coming there, and you generally find this in an area of high contrast, that is an area that has deep dark shadows and bright highlights. This is something you may want to get rid of because later it may interfere with your editing. So make sure that you put remove chromatic aberrations, and you're in a better place then. So that's the first thing you do. You correct the distortions that are caused by the lens and the camera. The next thing you do is take a look at your histogram. This histogram tells you that this image is underexposed and also slightly overexposed. As you can see, it's climbing up the right side of the histogram, and it's also touching the left side of the histogram because there are deep blacks and there are very bright highlights in this in this uh, in this image. In order to correct it, you may want to go to the light panel and you can reduce white. So as you can see, as I reduce whites, the histogram, the levels on the histogram keep dropping there. I could reduce highlights, and now as you can see, it has finally come down completely from the right hand side. Okay. Similarly, I can increase shadows, and as you can see now, the detail that was not available in the shadows is now being made available, and you can also increase overall the brightness of the image or the exposure. Generally, you need to do this according to what you saw at the scene. Okay. So I think this looks right, considering the scene. And the next thing we need to do is to make sure that the image is straight. So to do that, we'll go to the crop section here, and we'll just turn it around a bit so that the water is level. Okay, as you can see here, now it is level, and we'll accept this crop by double clicking on it. There are two things in Camera Raw. One is global adjustments and the other is local adjustments. Global adjustments affect the entire image, whereas local adjustments affect only parts of the image. So initially, let's take a look at all the global settings, and all that will be found here in the edit panel. So all these sections here are global adjustments. That means they will apply to the entire image. So at the moment, I think the color balance also is right because this was shot early morning at just after sunrise. If you check on the color, you can adjust the white balance of this image. So if you feel that it should have been a little more yellow, you could just add a little bit of yellow to it. Okay. And if you feel it's getting purplish, you can reduce the tint so that the grass looks more natural, and also the water. I'm going to add a little bit of vibrance to this to bring up the colors in this image. Now, the difference between vibrance and saturation is that saturation will evenly add saturation or more color to all the colors in the image, whereas vibrance will try to add to only those colors which are less saturated or somewhere mostly in the mid-tones. Okay, once that's done, I think the picture seems to be looking good, but still not there. Okay, so we have quite deep shadows here, and basically this image was shot keeping in mind the sunrise just over the mountain and to get a feel of this lake. Now, keep in mind the things that you want to do whilst editing this image. So firstly, we have taken care of the distortions, and finally we've also taken care of the exposure. Now you need to work on individual parts of the image. Okay, so if we zoom into the image, you will see that there are some spots here from sensor dust or the lens being dirty, etc. If you would like to know where these areas are, you could go to the third panel here, okay, which is the remove panel, and you can choose visualize spots. You can drag the slider to a point where you can actually see the imperfections in the image. So if I zoom in here, you will see if I press the space bar and drag, now I'm able to move the picture around whilst it's in its zoom state. So you could use either the remove tool here or the healing brush here or the clone stamp. Okay. I prefer using the remove tool, which is new, and you can change the size of the brush using this panel. Okay. Or you can also change the size of the brush by using the square brackets on your keyboard. The left square bracket is for reducing the size of the brush, and the right square bracket is used to increase the size of the brush. So you generally get it to the size of the imperfection and just click once and it's gone. Okay. So you could use this. Now, if you are seeing something like this, these markers here, that is because these are overlay markers which come to show the areas that have been edited. So if you don't want to see them, you can put show overlay off. If you want to see them, you put show overlay on. Okay, so I'm putting them off right now so it does not disturb our work. All right, so I'm going to click on all these areas here. You can even paint in that area if it's not a perfect square, if it's not a perfect circle. Okay, so take care of all these areas. So the smaller the size of the brush, the better, because less areas will be otherwise affected. Okay, so we are going to keep all this as is, and I think it looks pretty cool now. Let's take care of that as well. Okay, so I'm going to put visualize spots off. I'm going to press Command 0 or Control 0, which will resize the image to fit the screen. Okay. So we've taken care of those small imperfections. Now we will take a look at how to locally edit this file, that is, edit parts of the image separately. So you have the masking panel next here, from which you can choose different options. You have select subject, select sky, background, you have object selection, you can use the brush to paint different areas, you can use radial selections or linear gradients to selectively work on areas in the image. And you can also use a range of color range or luminescence range. So we'll take a look at some of these. So I'm going to select the sky. As you can see now, it's well selected, and the reason why it is green is because I've chosen green as a color to mark it as. So if you want another color, you could choose it from here, and you can choose the opacity, how you want it to look in the selection. And we want to select affected areas here, okay, and click OK. So this is my selected area now. I want to maybe darken it a bit or brighten it a bit, add some saturation to it, make it look a little bit more colorful, right? So we have worked on that area. Now I want to work with other areas of this image. Let's say I want to select everything except the sky. Okay. So we already have the sky selected here. So if you double click on the name of the mask, you can type in the name of the mask so that you know what it is from its name. And you have three dots here where it says more options, where you can click on these three dots and you will find an option called duplicate and invert. The reason why we're using this is because we want a new mask which is going to be the opposite of the sky mask, in the sense that we want everything except the sky. So I'm going to click duplicate and invert mask. Okay. So now it has created a new mask. It says sky inverted. You can change the name as you need. And this is the area that it has selected. So I'm going to now brighten it up a bit, okay, without affecting the sky. As you can see, the sky is left as is. So I'm going to brighten it up a bit, and I'm going to add a little bit of texture and clarity to it so that all the details come up right. I'm going to dehaze it a bit because I was shooting against the sun, so it created a kind of haze because the sunlight entered directly into the lens. Okay. So I have dehazed it a bit. So if I want to do a comparison now of the original image and the newly processed image, you have a small uh, icon at the bottom here which will let you do that. So it lets you cycle through the before and after states of the image. So if you click once, then you see what the image was before and what it looks like right now with the adjustments that we've just made. If you want to go back to single view, you keep this button pressed and select single view. So this will bring you back to the edited image. Another shortcut when you are in comparison mode and you want to get back quickly, you simply click the crop button and the edit menu. It will come back to single view. Or still further, keyboard shortcut is CE. C for crop, E for edit. That will also get you back to a single view of the file. Now what I want to do is these mountains here. I want to bring out the texture in these mountains, okay, which is not being shown well here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the masking area and I'm going to choose create new mask. I'll choose the brush, okay, and notice now you have the size, feather, flow, etc. I've kept flow and density full because I want the maximum effect. And I am going to change the size of the brush, okay, so by using the bracket keys, and I'm going to paint over this area. Okay, so as you notice now, this area is roughly selected. Okay, and I'm deliberately going to add a lot of exposure to it so that you can see where the mask is. Okay, we're going to now modify this mask, okay, by using the Alt button. When you press the Alt button, it will take away from the mask. So I start painting now on the edge of this mask. Now notice as I paint at the edge of the mask, it's going into the mountains, which I don't want. Okay, so I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to put this option called Auto Mask On. This helps you to find the edges and make a better selection. So if I zoom into this image now, okay, that's so you can zoom in also with the Control plus button, and I'm going to press the Alt key. Notice that it becomes a minus sign in the brush itself. And now I'm going to paint. So now as you paint, you will see that that halo effect is being removed. Okay. If you put show overlay on, you will see the red color, but you will not be able to see the edges of the mountain because the opacity is high. So if I change the opacity, now you can see it better. Okay. So I'm going to use the Alt button or the Option button on your Mac, and you paint this away from the mask. Okay. So I'm tidying up my mask. Okay. This is a very good technique to quickly select the area that you want to work with. Okay. So let's take a look. We don't want this other mountain here. So let's say we have a good selection. Now Control 0 or Command 0 to fit the image on the screen. Now I can bring the double click on the exposure to bring it back to normal. And now if I want, I can increase the exposure a bit, can reduce the blacks, increase the whites to increase the contrast. I can add texture, I can add clarity to it and bring out the detail in those mountains there. So when we do a comparison here, you will see that the before and after, there's a big difference here. Okay, so C and E gets me back to single view. So we've dealt with that, and now we want to maybe process the water a bit. So we're going to go back to masking, create a new mask. Okay, this time I'm going to choose select objects. Let's see whether we can use select objects to make a selection of the water here. So I'm going to paint roughly around the edges of the water and fill in the details. And let's see if Camera Raw is able to find the water for us. And it has. Okay. So quickly, we have now masked this area that we want to work with. And now you can change you can change the exposure, the temperature, you can change the saturation. I'm just overdoing it to show you the effect. Okay. So you can increase the contrast of it, you can reduce the highlights, okay, make it look better. And now I'm going to take back the saturation so that it looks a little more natural. Okay. And reduce the temperature a bit. If you feel you want it a little different color, you can add a little green to it, something like this. Okay, so let's see a before and after, much better. Okay, so now we are left with the foreground, this green color, and you may want to enhance this green color. So we can go to channel mixer. Okay, this is the global adjustment. Now since green is only in this area and nowhere else in the image, we could use this global adjustment to make changes to it. So the color of the grass, I want a little more greener. It is looking a bit purplish. So I'm going to go to hue, and the greens here, I'm going to bring them towards the yellow side. Okay. So as you can see, there's hardly any change here. So it's not the yellows, maybe it's not the green, sorry, it is the yellows that is going to affect it. So I'm going to make it a little more greener here on the yellow side. And then I'm going to go to luminance and I'm going to push up the yellows so that the grass becomes a little brighter. Now you also have, in masking, you have two other options here: linear gradients. So for example, if I want to darken the foreground, I could draw a linear gradient like this. Okay. And I could reduce the light in the foreground. So now my attention is drawn more to the middle and top of the image rather than the bottom of the image. Okay, this is one option. Another option, this is the best option to use in this case because we want the viewer to look at all the other elements in this. If you didn't want to use this, you can put it off for the moment and create a new mask and choose a radial gradient and draw a circle around the area which you think is more important than the rest and move it around. Now this is the important area, but we don't want to work on this area. We want to work on the inverse of this area. That is what is not of this area. So there is a button here near the radial gradient title which says invert. So when you invert this, everything except the area that you selected will be selected, and this fade off area is actually a feather. So if you put it as 0, this is what it will look like, and if you put it at 100%, this is what it will look like. So position it according to the effect you want. And now I am going to reduce the overall light in that area. So as you can see now, if I go to the main edit panel and do a compare, you can see now your attention is more towards the sun and the lake rather than the rest of the image. So this is how you can process this image here in Camera Raw. So once you're done processing this image in Camera Raw, you can open up the image in Photoshop. So once you open up this image in Photoshop, now here we can take care of all these other irregularities like this lens flare that has happened here. Okay, so Photoshop has many capabilities which, like generative fill, which is available in the latest versions of Photoshop. So use the lasso tool and select this area. Okay, if you want to add to this area, use the shift key and mark these areas. Okay, I've roughly marked the area. If you want to take away from the area, you use the alt key and it will take away from the area. So we try to keep as much of the original as possible. Okay, so I'm using alt to draw around those areas. Now if I right click on this area, it gives me an option for generative fill. So we'll ask it to generate. It's going to give us three options from which to choose. If we don't like that, we can generate further according to what we need. So this is a general landscape scene, so it should be able to do it at first shot itself. As you can see, it's done here. And if you want some variation, you can choose them. So once you've selected the variation you need, now this is what your image looks like. Okay, and if you want to make it permanent, you can merge these layers together. So for example, you can say merge down. So all those effects will be merged with your original image. Now the sky looks very bland here. Everything else is quite interesting. So in order to change the sky, Photoshop gives you the option to edit the sky using sky replacement. Okay. So using sky replacement now, it is going to try to put the current sky that is being shown here in your picture. So as you can see, it's made a mess of everything and it's not looking too good. So I'm going to choose maybe some other clouds here like this, but they are not matching. So probably let's try these. No, maybe these. Maybe this looks like something we can use, or maybe these. No. So there are a few options here which you can choose from, and this doesn't match. So let's go back to the top and search for an appropriate blue sky. This one, or maybe this one. Okay, let's say this one is good and we want to go with it. So in sky replacement, if you click on the blank space there, you can shift the edge of the sky, okay? And you can also change the temperature. So I'm going to make it a little warmer because it was early morning. You can change the scale of the sky, make it bigger or smaller depending on how you want it to look like, okay? And further you can add edge lighting, color adjustment if you want to. So I'm going to take it as is. So now if you look at this image, it looks very unnatural because the rays of the sun have been blocked by that sky adjustment. So if I put the sky adjustment off, you see that the bright sunlight needs to be brought in back again. So what you can do is select the sky replacement group here and put a mask onto it. Once you do that, now we go to the brush, we select black as a color in the foreground here. Okay, you click this to switch between black. If you don't have black and white here, click this icon, you'll get black and white. So we need black, so we switch using this key here. The shortcut key for that is X. So we are going to paint out the sky from here so that we can reveal the original sky. Okay. So to do that, I'm going to make sure that my flow is low, something like 5 or 9 or something like that, 9%. Opacity is 100%. Okay. And my mode is normal. I'm going to increase the size of the brush, okay, here, and I'm going to start painting. Okay. The reason why I chose flow is because when you go over an area with low flow, it will keep adding the effect. Okay. So now as you can see, I have got back the rays of the sun by painting along those lines. Okay. So we are able to salvage this picture now by using this method. Okay. And now the contrast of the sky is not looking right. Okay. So what you can do is, this is where the sky has been added here. So I will add a levels adjustment there. Notice that it automatically gets clipped to the sky layer. As you can see here, it is clipped. So it will only affect the sky layer. So I'm going to increase the intensity of the highlights and the shadows or the blacks. Okay. And I'm going to make it look a little brighter as it should. Okay. So this looks fairly good. Okay. Not 100% good, but fairly good. So this is now a new image which we've got. And if you feel that you still need more saturation in the sky, you can come here, click on the sky layer, click on hue and saturation, and increase the saturation of the sky. So fair enough. I think this is a good edit. You can save this as a PSD file so that you can come back and work with it. And finally, you can make a JPEG file. Okay, so it is saving. And now let's open up this JPEG file, or rather the original file as it looked, just to make a comparison between the two. So I'm going to drag that picture onto the tab area here in Photoshop, and it will open up that image. And I'm going to use window, tile all vertically, and press command or control 0 in each of these windows so that you can see now the before and after effect of the processing that we just did in Camera Raw and Photoshop. So thank you for watching. Please do subscribe to my channel and like it so that you will be kept abreast with all the latest tutorials that I will post. I intend to post tutorials every week, so keep in touch.